1 year after the fall of the architects. The war should have been over. Humanity had won. The architects, gods who could rewrite reality, erase civilizations, and manipulate time, were destroyed. Their last trick had been revealed. They had erased humanity not out of malice, but out of fear. Fear of what humans would become. And now, for the first time in history, humanity stood alone. No enemies, no overlords, no greater power in the galaxy. Except, something was wrong. A new war begins. Commander Ava Sinclair stood in the war room of the Harbinger of Wrath, watching the tactical display flicker with disturbing readings. Her emerald green eyes narrowed as she scrolled through the data. "Are you seeing this?" she muttered. Across the table, Admiral Jonathan Kane, the man who had killed a god, crossed his arms. His ice-blue eyes, sharp as ever, locked onto the data. "We wiped them out," Kane said flatly. "This shouldn't be possible." Ava didn't disagree, but the evidence was clear. Something was moving out in the void. Something huge, something old. Architect signals. But the architects were dead. Weren't they? Ava exhaled sharply, running a hand through her jet-black hair. "We need to investigate. If there's even a chance the architects left something behind." Kane shook his head. "We don't chase ghosts." But Ava didn't move, and Kane knew her well enough to recognize that she wasn't going to back down. After a long silence, he sighed. "Fine. You want this? It's your up. But I'm warning you, Sinclair. Whatever's out there, it's worse than anything we've seen before." The Lost System. The Iron Sun's dreadnought Stormbreaker led the task force with 4 Terran warships and a single stealth corvette, the Midnight Viper. Their destination? A system that shouldn't exist. The Hadros Rift. A sector of space where light itself seemed to bend unnaturally, where sensors failed, and where entire fleets had disappeared long before humanity ever fought the architects. As Ava stood on the bridge of the Midnight Viper, she felt it. A presence. Something was here. Something watching. "Commander," her pilot muttered. "You might want to see this." Ava turned toward the viewport, and her blood ran cold. They never left. In the vast, dead void of the Hadros Rift, something loomed. It was not a planet. It was not a ship. It was not alive. But it was there. A massive black monolith, miles wide, hovering in deep space, its surface pulsed with golden symbols, architect runes. Ava's heart pounded. This wasn't wreckage, it was active. And then, it spoke. Not through sound, not through a transmission, but directly into Ava's mind. "You should not have come." Ava staggered back, gripping the edge of the console. A deep alien presence clawed at the edges of her thoughts, pulling memories from her mind, rewriting reality around her. Then, in a flash, she saw it. The architects had never died. They had simply changed, and now they were waking up. The whispering dark Ava Sinclair had never known fear like this. She had fought the architects, watched planets vanish into nothing, faced gods, and survived. But this was worse. The architect Monolith loomed before her, its surface a swirling abyss of golden runes and shifting void metal, pulsing like a heartbeat. It was not dead, it was waiting, and it had spoken to her. "You should not have come." But it was too late to turn back. Ava forced her breathing steady, standing tall on the bridge of the Midnight Viper. The Iron Sun's dreadnought Stormbreaker floated nearby, its weapon systems fully charged, its crew waiting for her order. Admiral Jonathan Kane's cold voice crackled over comms. "Sinclair, I hope you have a plan, because whatever that thing is, it's waking up." Ava's emerald green eyes stayed locked on the monolith. "We're going inside." The infiltration team, Ava chose 5 of the best. Captain Elias Rourke, age 42, human, Terran Special Forces, a towering, scarred veteran, his left arm replaced with a cybernetic combat prosthetic. Tactical genius, zero patience. Lieutenant Soren Vex, age 29, human Iron Sun's operative, sniper, infiltration expert, augments allowing enhanced perception, covered in tribal tattoos from a lost colony world. Dr. Raya Voss, age 34, human, Republic scientist, architect tech specialist, the only human alive who had studied their ruins. Sharp mind, hides her fear well. Sergeant Leo Danton, age 36, human, heavy weapons specialist, massive gun-wielding brute, built like a war machine. Always grinning, never stops chewing on a stim stick. Ava Sinclair, 36, human, tactical officer, mission leader. Calm, calculated, but the voice in her head wouldn't stop whispering. Their mission? Enter the Monolith. Find out what's inside. And if necessary, destroy it. Crossing the threshold. The Midnight Viper maneuvered into position, launching the boarding skiff toward the Monolith. As they neared the surface, the golden runes shifted, twisting to match their faces. It was watching them. Ava felt pressure in her skull, as if something was pushing into her thoughts. Dr. Voss paled. I don't like this. Sergeant Danton grinned, cracking his knuckles. Lady, if we only did things we liked, we wouldn't be here. The skiff connected to the monolith's outer hull. The hatch hissed open. Inside was pure darkness. Not the absence of light. Something worse. Something alive. The labyrinth of the forgotten Ava led the team forward, weapons drawn. The walls of the monolith weren't metal, they shifted and pulsed as if breathing. Golden veins of energy ran through the structure, and whispers echoed all around them, not words. Memories. Ava froze. She was standing on Earth. No, not Earth. A memory of Earth. She turned and saw herself, a younger version. Years ago, standing in the Harbinger's war room, arguing with Kane about the war. We can't keep fighting forever, Jonathan. Ava's breath caught. This wasn't real. And then, the walls shifted again and she was back inside the monolith. Danton swore. What the hell was that? Voss's voice trembled. It's showing us something. Ava's pulse pounded. This wasn't an architect weapon. It was a recording. A machine that had absorbed everything it had ever erased, including human history. Echoes of the dead. They pressed forward, deeper into the monolith's core. The corridors became narrower, the golden symbols more erratic, flickering as if unstable. Then they reached it. A massive chamber. At its center stood a floating obelisk, humming with architect energy, surrounded by shifting ghost-like images. People, not real. Memories, lost civilizations, lost wars, lost souls, all of them trapped in the monolith's archive. Ava stepped forward, and suddenly, the whispers became voices. They did not erase us. They stored us. We are still here. Ava's hands shook. The architects hadn't just erased planets, they had kept them. Everything they had ever unmade was still here. And then the voices turned to screams, the awakening. The golden light flared. Ava gasped, dropping to her knees as a force slammed into her mind. Not an attack, a presence. The walls cracked open, and something stepped out. Not an architect, something older, something that had been waiting. And it spoke, not with a voice, but with a thought. We remember you, Ava Sinclair. The monolith wakes. The moment the voice entered Ava Sinclair's mind, the monolith came alive. The golden symbols lining the walls pulsed in synchronization with her heartbeat. The floor beneath her boots vibrating as if something deep inside the structure had been dormant and was now waking up. Her breath came in short, shallow gasps. The air itself felt heavy, pressing against her chest as though gravity had shifted. Her team wasn't speaking. Because they couldn't. She turned to them, Captain Rourke, Lieutenant Vex, Sergeant Danton, Dr. Voss, all of them frozen, their eyes wide, their bodies stiff, locked in place, trapped in time. No, not just them. The air wasn't moving. Her rifle was frozen in her hands. The golden glow of the monolith's core held everything perfectly still. Everything except her. And then it spoke again. "We remember you, Ava Sinclair." The words weren't sound. They were inside her, crawling through her mind like a foreign thought she had never invited in. Her muscles tensed. She had fought architects before. But this wasn't an architect. This was something different. A presence. A consciousness. Something that knew her. Ava gritted her teeth, forcing herself to stay calm. Whatever this was, it was testing her. She lifted her foot and stepped forward, breaking through the time lock. The second she did, the monolith reacted. The golden runes on the walls flashed, shifting. Not at random. They were forming words. Words in English. Ava stared. The symbols were arranging themselves in front of her, as if the monolith was speaking through them. And what she saw made her blood run cold. We did not erase. We archived. Her mind reeled. Every assumption humanity had made about the architects, that they erased entire civilizations, removed them from reality forever, was wrong. They hadn't destroyed. They had stored, kept every world, every species, locked away inside something beyond human understanding. Ava's hands clenched into fists. Why? Her voice felt distant when she spoke. Why me? The symbols flickered, and the entity inside the monolith gave her an answer she wasn't prepared for. The truth of the architects. The golden runes twisted, realigning, forming a massive rotating ring of symbols around the monolith's core. And then, reality itself shattered. Ava's body lurched forward, not physically, but her mind was pulled into something deeper. She was no longer in the monolith, she was somewhere else, a vast, endless place, a cosmic archive, and floating before her was an impossible sight. The architects, not dead, not gone, still here, suspended, frozen, locked away. The architect's last gambit. Ava's breath hitched. The architects, the entities that had nearly wiped out humanity, weren't truly gone. They had sealed themselves inside their own creation. The monolith wasn't a prison for humanity's lost worlds. It was a vault for the architects themselves. And now she had opened the door. The entity's voice returned. "You are the key." Ava's chest tightened. "What do you mean?" The golden runes flickered again, reshaping into something new. An image. Her. Standing in front of a massive control system, a console glowing with architect symbols. A command waiting to be executed. One that could release everything inside the monolith. Ava's mind snapped back into her body. She stumbled backward, gasping for air. Her team was still frozen. The golden glow pulsed. "Release us." Ava lifted her rifle. She had made a terrible mistake, and now she had to fix it. The weight of the universe. Ava Sinclair's heartbeat hammered in her chest. The golden symbols of the monolith burned brighter, twisting and spiraling around her. The frozen bodies of her team stood motionless, time locked in place. But she was still moving. She alone had been chosen, or cursed. Her emerald green eyes darted back to the massive, glowing console in the chamber's center. The control system of the monolith stood before her, alive with unreadable commands, pulsing like a thing that breathed. The architect entity's whisper coiled through her mind. "Release us." Ava tightened her grip on her rifle. "No." The monolith shuddered. A low hum vibrated through the air, the structure reacting to her defiance. And then the past flooded back. The memory of the end. The walls of the chamber rippled. Ava gasped as the world twisted around her. She was no longer standing in the monolith. She was somewhere else. Someone else. The final battle of the Architect War. She saw herself, 1 year ago, standing beside Admiral Jonathan Kane on the bridge of the Harbinger of Wrath. She saw the greatest fleet in human history launching the final attack against the Architects. Weapons that should never have existed. Planet crackers, entropy warheads, time-fracturing kinetic slugs, all fired at once. The Architects screamed across reality, and then the Architects locked themselves away. The monolith wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a prison. It was an escape hatch. They had built it themselves, sealed themselves inside, because they had seen the future of humanity. They hadn't lost. They had been waiting. The entity reveals itself. Ava ripped herself out of the memory, panting, her pulse racing. "Why show me this?" she hissed. "What do you want from me?" The voice inside the monolith shifted. It was no longer just a whisper. It became a shape. A figure stepped forward from the swirling light. Not an architect. Something else. Something in between. A humanoid form, but wrong. Its body wasn't solid. It was a shifting cascade of possible futures, a flickering nightmare of what could have been and what still might be. And its face. Ava's stomach dropped. It was her own. A version of herself, but older, worn, scarred. "I am you," the entity said. Ava froze. Her own voice echoed from the thing before her, layered with hundreds of variations of itself. "That's not possible," she whispered. The entity stepped forward. "You are the key," it said again. "You are the only one who can decide." "Decide what?" Ava demanded. The golden runes shimmered. "To bring us back." The last choice. Ava felt the weight of the entire universe pressing down on her. The console in front of her pulsed. One command, one touch. She could reactivate the monolith. Undo the Architect's self-imposed exile. Bring them back into the universe. Or she could shut it down forever. Bury them inside their own machine, lock the vault, erase them completely. Ava's breath was ragged. She was a soldier, not a god. She had no right to decide the fate of an entire species, and yet she was the only one who could. The voice, her voice, spoke again. "If you do this, humanity will never know what comes next." Ava swallowed. "Good." And she reached forward. The end of the monolith. The moment her fingers touched the console, the monolith reacted violently. The walls shattered outward, the symbols screaming in a language no human could understand. The entire chamber pulsed with golden light, blinding and absolute. Ava gritted her teeth as energy burned through her body, flooding her mind with the last echoes of the Architects. They weren't just being erased. They were being forgotten. Lost. Forever. The monolith collapsed inward, folding in on itself like a dying star. The cosmic archive of the Architects, the last remnant of their species, was gone, and Ava Sinclair was the only one left standing. Back to reality, she gasped, staggering back into her body. The monolith was silent. Her team, Rourke, Vex, Danton, Voss, began to move again as if nothing had happened. Voss blinked. "Commander? What?" Ava turned toward the core. It was dead. The golden runes had vanished. The monolith's power was gone, and deep down she knew. The Architects would never return. The war that shouldn't have been. 2 days later, aboard the Harbinger of Wrath, Admiral Jonathan Kane stood in front of Ava Sinclair. His ice-blue eyes studied her in silence. "You destroyed it," he said. "Not a question, a fact." Ava held his gaze. "Yes." Kane's jaw tightened. "What did you see?" She hesitated. "The future. The truth." The architects hadn't been the real threat. It had always been humanity itself. But she wouldn't tell Kane that. Not yet. Instead, she simply said, "Nothing worth remembering." Kane nodded. And the war was finally over.